Welcome everybody. Hi everyone. I think for those who are used to these to the smart cookies by now, you would be used by me stealing Joe's idea of if everybody can say hello on the chat, hoping to move the chat to all panelists and attendees so we can all see you. And if you can say hello and probably pop down your location, I quite like to see where people are from. Sometimes we have crazy locations like Vietnam and Thailand and all those kind of things, which is I find that quite nice. Hello, everyone. Oh, Malaysia, there we go. See, I told you we are international. So welcome everybody. For the ones that haven't been there before, this is a Smart Cookies event, so it's a 20 minutes talk plus 10 minute-ish Q&A at the end. During the talk, please feel free to ask your questions in the chat. We have Emily around in the chat from Cookies HQ, who's going to moderate and try to take all the questions in. The call where the video is recorded, so if for some reason you're going to miss anything, it will be available on our YouTube channel, and I think Emily's gonna put that in the chat in a second. And if you want to make sure that you don't miss any kind of new events, please pop in onto our newsletter, and again Emily's gonna pop that into the chat later on. Now, in a 1 minute pitch, as you know, Cookies HQ is a software company and we have nothing to do technically with marketing or anything else that we normally talk on the smart cookies, because we had talks about, I don't know, SEO, investments, marketing, content. So the idea of the smart cookies is really for us to just enjoy that kind of half an hour and just learn from experts on subjects that we know nothing about. So that's why Chris today is here. Chris, hello. You all right?
Hi there, Nick.
So what we are...
Thanks for having me.
Oh, pleasure. And what we're going to go today is a talk from Chris, and the gist of the talk is basically how to use marketing to increase brand awareness, I would say. Something along this gist. But obviously, I'm going to give now the microphone to Chris. And then hopefully we're going to have a good 20 minutes chat. Please, people, don't forget to ask your questions in the chat. At the end of that talk, we will go for a QA session. Thank you, Chris. All over to you.
Wicked. Thanks for that quick intro. My name is Chris Goodfellow. I'm the founder and CEO of Inkwell. We're a content marketing agency based in Bristol. I'm also the dad of a 3-month-old. So if you can see I look a bit tired, that's why. I'm here today to talk about content marketing, so it's what we do, and we wanted to it's a big topic. I wanted just to pick out some kind of practical elements that I think are really useful, stuff that you can implement straight away, and just give you an introduction to our approach to content marketing and how it works. As Nick says, we've got a decent amount of time for Q&A afterwards, so do think of any questions you have as we go. They could be overarching things to do with SEO or something like that, or they could be very specific to your business and your marketing goals. I'd suggest popping them in the chat window as we go, and that way we remember them, and I'll get to them all at the end of the talk. So I'm just going to start sharing my presentation and we can kick off. Brilliant. So as I mentioned, the company name is Inkwell, and our goal is to create conversations with business owners. So we help connect you with potential clients through clear, insightful content. And I think when we think about content marketing, it's really important to remember that your prospect's time is short and you need to be able to cut through the noise. So we know there's a huge amount of content being published. It's growing exponentially. What can your company do to stand out, build awareness, and start conversations with prospects? A really quick intro to our work, some case studies, and some of the businesses we work with. So we're a content marketing agency. Our specialism is growing or creating educational content for small business owners. And that means we work with all kinds of organizations, right from corporates like Microsoft and TSB, through to scale-ups and government organizations. Anyone that wants to either sell to smaller business owners through educational content or just to help and support them. And a few examples of some of the projects we've worked on there. So I always think with these things, it's really important to kind of frame the topic. And if you're thinking about content marketing, why it's important and what it can do for your business. So we want your business to stand out by providing value. So we believe in selling through providing value, right? So content marketing is going to do a few things for you on that front. So it's going to create awareness and build trust. It's going to get people to your website, and it's going to get them to start building a relationship with you. A second point that's really important for a lot of the clients we work with, particularly in sort of the accounting sector, legal, etc., is it's going to give you an opportunity to demonstrate technical expertise. So whenever we're buying something, we really want to feel like the company we're buying from really knows their stuff and knows what they're doing. And content marketing gives us an amazing opportunity to do that. Third, it's going to generate inquiries. So it's always worth bringing it back to, what are your overall marketing and sales goals, and how can content help get people into the marketing funnel and move them forwards and hopefully generate inquiries for the business. So the first a small number of points I want to make today, and something we advocate really strongly, is start with your audience. So when you're thinking about the ideas about what you want to cover in the content that you write, that needs to be grounded in your audience challenges. So absolutely SEO research, and that has a really important place in content marketing, and I'll go on to that a little bit in a minute. But for us, it's really, really important to start with the audience, to start with your customer. And that's very similar to any sales process, right? When you speak to a new prospect, you want to figure out exactly what their challenges are, what they need, and how you can help. So when we think about ideation and what we want to write about, we talk to customers, we do discovery calls, we go to meetups, whatever it takes to figure out the ideas. And you're looking to identify challenges you can help them with that are related to your business. So when you're looking for ideas, there's a few ways to do that. There's a few ways to have that kind of audience-centric, audience-led content marketing strategy. The first one, the obvious one, is talk to clients. So you're already doing this all the time, whether it's in a shop, whether it's in a sales meeting, whether it's on the customer support line. It's really interesting to make a note of kind of the stuff that keeps coming up. When you meet somebody at a conference, in this post-COVID world, what are the things that people are really excited about in your space? What kind of expertise do they want from you? What comes up in conversation? Because if you see that happen 2 or 3 times, that's a really good indicator that it could make a powerful piece of content. Because if the person that you're speaking to is really excited and interested about it, chances are lots of other people in that customer group are too. The second thing we do, which is more sort of structured exercise, is map customer journeys. So I'm not talking about the kind of e-commerce, where do they click on the website sort of customer journey. I'm talking about the purpose of your company. So normally a business, its wider goal will be to move a person from sort of point A to point B, right? So if you're a fitness instructor, you might want to get somebody that's unhealthy and unhappy about that to somebody that has a sustainable fitness routine and feels good about themselves. So everybody, even if you have a product that solves one individual use point, you're probably thinking about a wider purpose and impact, and mapping that customer evolution, that customer journey, helps you start to pick out points where you can help solve challenges and create some really interesting content. And obviously, along that journey you have with the customer, that content's gonna have slightly different impacts on your marketing funnel as well. So we'll actually sit down with people, audience members, with an A3 piece of paper and just go through their journey. Say, from when they launched their business to their 3rd year or their first round of investment or whatever it is, and plot all the important milestones and challenges. And that's one really good way to kind of prompt people to come up with ideas. Third, look at your data. At very least, I'm sure you have Google Analytics and some data from your marketing channels. Depending on the type of business you run, you might have all sorts of other data about how people buy, customization, all kinds of stuff. So there's always opportunities to mine that to figure out what people are interested in and why. Once you've done that kind of brainstorming session, so that practical, let's get as many ideas as we can together as a team and start to think about how we put them into a strategy. It's important to think about the different types of content that you can leverage. So I put just 4 really brief examples there. Truth is, there's wonderfully endless opportunities from podcasts to infographics, all kinds of content that you can use to communicate with your audience. The point I want to make here is just that you need to think about what makes sense for your audience. So you might hit upon an idea that's actually a really in-depth topic, and for that topic you think it's worth a 3,000-word downloadable guide, and that guide justifies you grabbing an email address, and that's great. So it's just kind of thinking, okay, that individual topic, it could be anything from a 1-minute video, a 4,000-word post, but just really thinking about how your ideas can best be conveyed. What's the easiest way for you to help the reader? And then just to sort of add to that as well, it's important to think about different ways to leverage content. So if you're putting all that time and effort into creating something, just think about maybe a few other ways you might be able to use it. So Nick today is going to take this live webinar, they're going to pop it up on YouTube, and they're going to do some social media around it. So if you have done that heavy lifting in terms of creating something, that original, you might be able to spin that off as well. And then the other point about that is just, that it is a bit bewildering how many different sort of types that there are. So, often when you're doing experimenting and everything, if you just kind of settle on sort of 2 or 3, and do a much better job than if you try and spread yourself too thinly. The other thing about kind of content, trying to switch themselves on. So the other thing about content is it's really helpful to think about pillars. So what we mean by that is kind of content themes. If you imagine you walk away from those exercises of kind of talking to your customers, getting lots of different ideas and topics to write about, you've got a kind of big mind map of what you could do. At that point, it's quite helpful to try and put them into 3 or so buckets of themes or pillars that your content strategy is going to be based around. So for example, a software company like Cookies, they might have one bucket that's very much about the sort of technical stuff and how they work and customer case studies. And that theme, that pillar, is really about people that are quite far down the sales funnel, and it's about helping them use their products and work with the company. So that has a very specific role. It has a persona attached to it. But another one might be that they decide that they're really interested in kind of an important topic related to the industry. So something like diversity in tech, or perhaps coding for kids. And that is a topic they identify. It's top of funnel marketing, so it's about building brand awareness and making an impact. But that's the theme they're going to do. So you can see how you might pick 3 or 4 over a 6 or 12-month period, just to kind of make sure that your team knows exactly what that type of content is, what it's supposed to do for the company, and to give your content strategy and all the ideas you have a bit more structure. The other thing I wanted to talk about with marketing plans is kind of what information you include in there. So you're obviously going to have your article titles, perhaps author date, all of that regular stuff. There's a few more I've noted there that I think is worth putting in, just to make sure you're getting the most value out of the investment you're putting into content. So pillar, we just talked about that. Target persona. Personas are great, like you all know who your customers are, but I think it's useful to remind yourselves of that regularly. So kind of saying this article is exactly for this person, make sure that whoever's working on creating it or marketing it knows exactly what it has to do. Call to action. So one of the biggest things we see with clients when we first start working with them is that they're doing a lot of content, but they're not thinking enough about the next step the audience member takes with them, right? So absolutely, they've got the traffic, they're getting the people to the site from Google or whatever, but we really want to think about the next step. So that could be as simple as reading another article, signing up for a webinar, making an inquiry, and
think about that when you're writing it, but also popping it into the content plan really helps remind people to do that. Finally, keyword targets. So what is this article going to target from an SEO perspective? And I'll get onto that and marketing in a moment. So really quickly on tone of voice. So as I said, there's an exponential amount of content out there, and I'm sure you will know when you search around and look into an area or try and solve your own challenges that there's a bewildering amount of choice. So you really need to write in a way that's dynamic and that can cut through the noise and represent your brand in the best way. So we normally help clients add tone of voice guidelines to their brand guidelines, right? So it doesn't have to be a huge exercise for you to do that. And that should span every written word across the business, right? It should dictate how or help your team understand how to write everything from sales emails to blog posts to copy in the product itself. A couple of really quick things to remember when you're writing and kind of try and improve that you can implement to try and improve your writing straight away. Make sure you have that clear structure. So use your subheadings, make it really easy for the reader to understand and use the content. Short sentences, if you take one thing away from today, it's that short sentences are your friends. So really make things as simple as possible. And just basically you're trying to do one thought per sentence, and that makes it a lot easier to read. The final point is conversational language. And what I mean by that is not how you talk when you've had 3 pints at the pub. It's how you talk in your industry, in your business setting. So if you are at a conference, if you are in a meeting, you probably have a very sort of conversational tone. And if you can bring that out in your writing, that's great. That also helps with things like jargon. So generally people shy away from jargon, but if there are industry terms that are used commonly and that everybody reading your article will understand, it's a nice way to show that you understand your audience and build familiarity with them. And then finally, just that point of consistency and building trust. So we have this kind of subconscious thing where when we're moving around and examining a brand, jumping on their social media, their blog, looking at their product pages, that needs to be consistent. And that goes for all of your marketing, from the color palette to the tone of voice, to the way your customer service people talk to customers. So it's really important when we write content to have a really consistent tone of voice, to be accurate, have a consistent layout as well, and that's how we build trust. So we want all of our touch points, all of everybody's touch points with our brand to be really consistent. That's how we build trust, and that's how we get those conversations and that engagement. Finally, I've got a few minutes before the Q&A starts just to do a kind of whistle-stop bit on SEO and marketing. Obviously an absolutely massive topic, but I just wanted to give you kind of 2 takeaways on that. So number 1, this is the pitch. This is a competition we run. It's a national startup competition. So if you do have anybody that's running a startup that you know or raising investment, please send them our way. But the reason that I pulled this out is just to give you a quick example. So our traffic from organic search has a 1 minute 4 second session duration. Referrals is nearly 2 minutes. So the reason I raised this is it's really important to think about how readers are discovering your content and therefore what their intention is and how it should be presented. So you know probably a lot of your traffic is coming from search. So you have to be aware that they're looking for a very specific search query. They're looking for an answer to a very specific question, and they might not know your brand. So just keep that in mind when you're creating content marketing. Finally, SEO starts with the reader. So I'm not talking about sort of, backlinks, all of that stuff, just thinking about SEO in terms of what you put on the page. No one outside of Google knows how the algorithm works, and there's probably not one single person in Google that knows either. So we're talking about over 200 ranking factors. So what we do know is best practice, and the shortcut for getting the best practice right is to start with your reader. If you get the right layout, you make it clear and easy to understand, Google will love that. You've got to break articles up into useful headings. So that's obviously title heading is H1, and then it's H2, H3, and so on. And Google understands that hierarchy of information. So not only is it really great for your reader because they understand, this is the main thrust of the article, this is a subheading, and they can scan down that and see what's valuable for them. But it helps Google understand the hierarchy of information too. therefore the search will look on your page favorably. Include keywords. So if you're writing, when you've identified your topic, you should know the keywords that go with it. Just use them in natural language. So you don't want to force it and do what used to be called keyword stuffing. You just want to do the housekeeping of making sure the keywords that you have identified appear in the places that Google wants to see them. Primarily, it's got to be in the headline, your primary keyword. It's got to be in your lead paragraph. It's got to be in some of your subheadings, and then a couple of times in your copy too. So make sure you got your keywords in mind, but write naturally and just do the housekeeping. And then finally, make sure you get those external and internal links. So they really help Google understand how your site's laid out, and they're also really useful from a user perspective as well. So the user wants to be able to, you want them to be able to click through to another article or resource you have that's going to help them. So it's a win-win there. So a really quick case study. So I mentioned Enterprise Nation, or on the second slide there, they're the UK's biggest community of small business owners. They've got thousands of members and do over 500 events every year. So a huge community of micro businesses. And our goal was to encourage people to join the community, so to sign up for their paid membership. And two unique things we did in this case. So, we always do audience-led content strategies, and we really use the interviews with members and monthly meetups to source ideas. And by getting them from the audience, they got a huge amount of traction because we knew it was so bang on the personas we were writing about. The second is we used the community split up in small business owners and advisors. And we used the small business owners to talk about their experience with the thing we were writing about, and advisors to share their advice. And what that's doing is building familiarity. So there's lots of opportunities to link to member profiles and services and stuff like that. But it's also kind of showing the reader that the person that's the people in the community, exactly what they're like and why they're relevant, and they can kind of see themselves in that challenge. So I'm going to share the link to the PDF in a second. You can click on that read case study button if you want to learn any more. But in terms of reads and stuff, so 59% higher than the other content published at the same time. Bounce rates were low, and about 10% of people clicked on a call to action. And so not only are we getting increasing the reads, but we're making sure that it's sticky content and that people are staying in the sites, and we get the results that we want. We get the businesses to take that next step. Great. So that is my whistle-stop introduction to content marketing. We've got about 10 minutes for questions now.
Thank you very much, Chris, for that. That was really great. We got a couple of QA, we got a couple of questions, and we also have some people in the chat. But I'm going to start.
Nick,
yeah. Can you hear me?
Hi there, Nick. I'm really sorry, Nick. I can't hear you, so you might have to communicate via the chat briefly. Something's gone wrong with my audio. But I will assume you asked me to pick up one of the questions in the chat, so I'll go ahead and do that if that's okay. So, there's something here from Sally. We're an MVP stage creating a new giving community. What would you concentrate on? So, yeah, really good question. I think you want to kind of get a sense of the volume and regularity of content that you kind of have the capacity to do. So it sounds like you're quite a new business. A little bit of that is going to come through experimentation, right? So you want to straight away start sharing and talking about what you do, and hopefully getting those early adopters and those people that can give you really valuable feedback on what you're doing. So I'd always recommend, from sort of general business perspective, kind of showing people behind the scenes, saying what you're working on, and getting as much feedback as possible from your potential customers. And a lot of that's going to come from social media. When it comes to content marketing, again, just do that when you're doing that customer research, when you're figuring out exactly what needs to be included in your MVP. Start pulling out the challenges around the problem you're solving. So, there might be something there about, volunteering in a certain way, or fitting volunteering around work. I don't know your audience, so it's hard for me to guess, but just do those conversations. And as you're learning about what you want to put in your MVP, it should also influence your content strategy. I'd imagine as well that there's just going to be a lot of showcasing, right? So you want kind of case studies that aren't just how people used your product, but very much showing kind of the volunteering and impact that they've made. So there's going to be hopefully some wonderful case studies there. Mark, what tools do we recommend? So I use Moz a lot. SEMrush is good, and yeah, I use Neil Patel's tool as well to look at the competition. So there are absolute ton of SEO tools out there. I think everyone's got their sort of one or two favorites as well. How would you go about planning content for the week, month? I'd recommend planning it a few months in advance. So we tend to use either Trello boards or hopefully a shared spreadsheet, so maybe a Google Sheet, to create content strategies. And then we do that exercise I mentioned in the talk about sort of like, we've done that originally. So we've done the ideation, we picked our pillars, and then we put that into either a Trello board or a spreadsheet that everybody can see and work on. And yeah, I would try and plan as far as you can in advance. So you can always, if you do stuff that kind of reacts to current events or changes in the company, that's great. You can just leave slots for them. It's really, really helpful to get the advice-led content mapped out quite far in advance, just to make sure you're thinking about it, to make sure it gets done and your team manages to fit it in. Useful Google Analytics tips and tricks do you recommend for content ideation? Yeah, so slight maybe tangent on what you're expecting, Billy, but I definitely look at your archive. So we do a lot of content audits for people, and that's right from sites with 10, 20,000 blogs to kind of smaller corporate sites. And we always find that people aren't really getting enough value from their high-performing content, their evergreen content. So it's definitely worth jumping in Google Analytics and just looking at what content is consistently getting a lot of traffic from search. You'll probably find that there's 10 to 20 articles that are dominating your blog traffic. And then just have a look at them and think about what you can do to get more value from that, to get more conversions from the traffic that you already had, the investment you've already made, right? So, is there an intention from the keywords that people are hitting that page, the topic that allows you to maybe promote an event, or maybe it's worth creating a resource so you can grab some data from that search traffic, or it's a call to action to book a session, and then also just updating the content generally. So saying like, okay, this is performing very well. There's every chance though that over time that performance will drop. So just looking at those perennial articles and saying, what can we do to add value? You might want to put some video in there. You might just want to update the content. You might want to improve the layout. And I think that's the number one thing I do in Google Analytics. Just jump in there, look at the perennial content and figure out how you can get much more value from it. Other than that, just make sure you've got your goals set up as well for your content. So your goals are probably going to be around things like newsletter signups, e-commerce related stuff like that, but just make sure you're looking at what the path is to that goal and how content's playing a role in that. So that's the Google one. So we've got one here from Maddie. We are building a company specializing in one-off grand design style homes. Our target audience is very small, architects and clients who have already engaged an architect and are searching for us online to validate their choice to ask for us to tender. A call to action is therefore very difficult. Yeah, I absolutely understand that. So for some companies, so a couple of examples of, other like related examples would be, we work with venture capitalists, for example. We work with financial advisors. Like for very technical companies, it's a lot of the sales, that B2B sales process isn't a kind of like click here now and buy something. So then yeah, you're right. It is hard to think about, what is the call to action. So I'd sort of widen your thinking about content a bit and just say, look, what role is it going to play in the sales process? Because probably for you, it is about demonstrating technical expertise and showcasing some of the amazing work that you do. And content can absolutely do a lot for you there. And it might be that you more focus on, where you put it. So you might say that actually your director or whatever is going to republish some of the content to LinkedIn and really take an opinion on something, a stance, and kind of build their network that way. Because that's kind of how B2B sales work. It is a network building exercise for us all. And that maybe is thinking about how content can more do that than lead to a direct conversion. That said, there's no reason not to have perhaps a guide on something specialist that will get you an email sign up. That might be one way to get them, on a mailing list and then start marketing them over time. And yes, it's about, that's maybe one way. I would still though try that kind of standard call to action of, allowing people to book a call or make a request just to have a chat. So it might not be that they're new to the company, that they're going to hit your website from a search engine and book a call. But I still don't think I'd completely rule out the idea that somebody that knows your brand already, that's maybe spoken to you before, seen you on social media, read a couple of blog posts, might still go for a regular style call to action. So there's a bit of a sort of winding answer to that as I sort of worked it out in my head. But generally speaking, yeah, I would use it as a trust building exercise. Think about posting on LinkedIn or perhaps industry blogs. And then don't be afraid to try those kind of more normal CTAs about signing up or booking a call. Okay. Do you think long form content / guides are more valuable in terms of engagement than shorter blog posts? So I'll take that one first. Yeah, so they're very different purposes. So long form guides are good for SEO. We don't know that the length of content is necessarily a ranking factor, but if you answer a question more comprehensively, you're more likely to get backlinks and Google's more likely to look upon you favorably. So longer content tends to perform well, and there is a minimum as well. So you want to write at least 400 words. So it's just a question of thinking about what the topic is and what exactly you want what the topic justifies, I guess, and what the reader intent justifies. So there's probably topics within your industry or your specialism that do justify that long form content, that 3,000 word article that really absolutely comprehensively nails a subject. But not every topic is going to do that. Some topics are just a 700 word blog post. So what I'd say is look at the topic, look at the value you're going to provide, and then also think about your own resource, right? Because it's really hard just to keep writing, 1,000 word articles every week, depending on the size of your marketing team. So you're probably going to come up with some kind of sensible blend. You're probably going to say, okay, every month we're going to write 2 long form articles and 4 blogs. And all of the clients that we have on retainers have kind of a mix of content types like that. So we might do an opinion piece for them, and then we'll do 2 long form pieces and a blog. So I don't know exactly what marketing mix is going to work right for you, but just think about that. So useful analytics tips for content ideation. Yeah, just look at where people are and look at the dwell times. So really quick win there. So looking at all your content, not just in terms of popularity, but in terms of how long people stay on the page. So that just gives an extra indicator of the quality of what you're doing and how interested people are. If you spot a dwell time that's kind of stands out, that's a nice indicator of an area of your site that you could work on, of content idea, perhaps that you could improve. And then another one, do you have any tips on gaining momentum reach on social media platforms for a new start business? Yeah, absolutely massive question, that one. I think for me, I'm all about getting on social media if you're new as quickly as possible. So you can do that even before you register a company. And then just really trying to galvanize people around what you're doing. So the more you can involve people in your ideation process, in getting your company set up, in developing your idea, whatever you're doing at the early stages, the better, because they're the people that will turn into advocates. They're the people that will give you feedback that's absolutely invaluable in terms of what you invest your time in, and how you shape your business. So yeah, just get on there early and really have a think about whether you want to do that kind of almost sort of that behind the scenes content where you can get a lot of feedback. Because if, you know, I love it when people do that pre-launch, because if they've been on social media asking people, oh, you know, why should we do it this way, yada yada, and giving loads of valuable content, or like, what do you think of this color scheme, or whatever it is, by the time they launch, they've got a bunch of people that are ready to go and be customers. What would you say of the priority of creating content for other blogs as guest blogs versus creating more content for your own site? Your own site at the end of the day is the focus for sure. Creating content for other blogs is a great way to increase the size of your audience, and to get really healthy backlinks. So I would just, again, consider like what your marketing mix is going to be, because you might say that, you know, if you're doing something like 10 posts a month for your own site, you might say, I'm also going to do one for somebody else. So just get that in, and I feel like I'm not entirely answering your question, but just get it in, and yeah, just make sure you're doing it regularly and doing that outreach that requires.
Chris,
so 2 very good books that talk about this particular issue from Maddie. Okay, cool.
Chris, can you hear
Got
me?
the links.
No.
Unique. Do you think unique new images add more valuable for Google instead of stock photos? So Google is starting to look at images more closely, and so really make sure you're doing the housekeeping stuff in terms of getting your alt tags and getting really helpful descriptions of your photos in there, or your images in there. That also helps with accessibility, so people that are using sight readers and stuff. So do that housekeeping stuff. New images versus stock. I don't know anything. I don't know whether Google looks at one more favorably, although what I would say from a brand perspective is, yeah, stock photos often are quite, I guess, like jarring. I think as a consumer, you can kind of immediately spot a stock photo. That doesn't mean you shouldn't use them. It just means that you should sort of choose carefully, and that probably means getting an iStock account and paying, or using something like Unsplash and just doing the groundwork to find the right images that are going to represent your brand and sort of hit your tone of voice and everything, and look in the way, present your company in the way that you want to. More often than not, when we get to work with a new client, you do see that kind of horrible stock images that don't match the brand, and it really doesn't do anything for you. So yeah, I'm not saying don't use stock images. I'm just saying use really good ones. Okay, I'm getting cut off. Thanks, Nick.
Thank you. So I know Chris can't hear me. I was trying to take over. Maybe you'll be able to hear me now. No, maybe not. Which is a shame, because for me the Q&A is really my favorite part, where we can actually interact and speak to each other, which is a shame we haven't had that. But thank you, Chris, if you can hear me. If not, you will hear it in the rerun. Thank you for having taken over the whole QA session. Thanks a lot. Everybody, thank you very much for attending today. As you know, we do one of those events every 2 weeks. I think Emily has shared all the links for you to know about where to find us next. So newsletter, or all different channels, YouTube, LinkedIn, and Twitter. In about 2 weeks, we are going to be joined by, I'm looking at the name again, which I forgot. Oh, this is terrible. I had everything ready. There we go. We're going to be joined by Sarah Williams from Rocco, and we're going to talk about HR. It may sound dull, but I promise that the talk is going to be pretty cool. So thank you very much, everybody. Chris, I don't know if you can still hear me. If you can, thank you very much. If not, thank you very much again. Everybody,
Thanks,
see you soon. Oh, you can hear me now. There we go. The joys of tech. Thanks a lot, Chris. Well done on the QA. Thank you very much. See you in about 2 weeks. Bye.